At the start, I introduced myself as a book that trained renowned magicians who shaped history. They were hailed as heroes for elevating the empire, but in Reynolds Academy's library, I scoffed heroes, sages, they were talentless fools. I wasted time studying them, and now, none of it matters. After being hit by truck, I was reborn as a grimoire in another world. At first, I couldn't believe I'd become a book, but I found joy in training magicians. Just by reading me, they gained magical knowledge. One day, a boy saved himself from a snake monster with fireball and asked, "How did I do, master?" I snapped, "Idiot, that's not how you channel magic." Despite thousands of years training disciples, I now wonder why I'm stuck in this endless cycle, moving from owner to owner. It's been 300 years since my last student, and I just want someone to read me again. As I screamed, a boy suddenly walked toward me, picking up some books. He said the librarian said it should be around here. I called out, "Is that a person?" and shouted, "Hey, look over here." But I quickly realized he couldn't hear me. Only those who touch me or fulfill the contract can. Still, the boy picked me up, saying, "I just heard something." He looked at me, and I said, "Young boy." Confused, he asked, "Who are you? Where are you?" I replied, "I am Grimoire, the legendary Grimoire." He stared, asking, "A talking book?" I urged him to open my cover, and when he did, lightning erupted, revealing a magic circle and his memories. "This is what awaits you if you join me," I explained. "Your magical talent will bloom, and you'll be remembered throughout history as a great magician." Though I knew it was just sweet talk, he had no magical potential. I wasn't lying about making him great. But then he said, "I don't want to become a magician." I was taken aback and nervously said, "Think again, young boy. I can make you the greatest magician ever, you know." He thought for a moment and said, "I want to become a knight." I was shocked. I asked, "What's your name?" He answered, "I'm China Yunsbelia." I shouted, "Right, China something. You're better suited for magic than a sword." He replied, "How do you know that?" I said, "I've been watching you." He said, "Didn't we just meet?" I told him, "Well, I've watched you a lot. How about becoming a magic swordsman? Use a sword in one hand and magic in the other." Excitedly, he replied, "A magic swordsman? That sounds really cool." I said, "Then open my cover now. I'll make you a legendary magician." "No, a magic swordsman." Magic began to pour out of me, and he was shocked. I granted him the authority to teach and bound the contract until his death. I thought, the solitary wait of 300 years has ended. My magician raising starts again now. I said, "Yes, it's done. I really did it." Finally, he thought, "It feels like your tone has changed." I added, finally getting out of this damned bookshelf. As he listened, Yunsbelia said, "Grimoire, I've reconsidered. I really don't think I can do magic. I come from a knight family and don't want to be disowned. I'm really sorry." I shouted, "Come on, if you get kicked out, so be it. What's the big deal?" He replied, "Yes, that's a bit." I continued, "Are you afraid of your father? Worried you'll get beaten up for learning magic?" I shouted, "If you learn magic from me, you'll be 10 times stronger than your father. If he wants to marry you off, then just use magic on him." Yunsbelia asked, "Why would I attack my father?" I exclaimed, "Is that long wait all for nothing?" Yunsbelia said, "Yeah, I'll introduce you to another student from the academy. You can form a new contract with them." I replied, "No." He looked confused, so I shouted, "No way in hell, you bastard. Once a contract is made, a new one cannot be formed until the current owner dies. Why are you telling me this now? You should have either made a contract or not at all." I said, "I'm really sorry." He replied, "Sorry isn't enough. A piece of trash like you becoming a knight. I'm really sorry. I didn't think things through," Yunsbelia said. Suddenly, he shouted back, "You crazy Grimoire. What right do you have to curse me? It's like you forced the contract on me." A piece of paper trying to belittle a knight. He put me back and said, "It's over now. You said you were in the bookshelf for 300 years, right? Well, good for you. If you lasted 300 years, can't you wait until I die?" I shouted, "You son of a bitch. You shouldn't be treating me like this. Goodbye. Find the next contractor after I'm gone," he replied. "Stop right there. I'm using my authority to say this," I shouted. As he was leaving, he asked, "What are you saying?" I thought, "I'm doomed. Isn't this working? So now I have to wait again until that bastard dies?" I shouted, "No, just die. Smash your head into the ground and die right now." As he walked forward, his foot slipped, and he fell, dead. I explained, it took half a day to find the boy's corpse. The body was quickly taken care of, and the library was quiet in the late evening. I sighed and said, I thought I might finally escape this boring place. It's sad that the boy died so young, but this wipes out 300 years of waiting. Since the contractor is dead, I'll be moving to a new chapter soon. I wondered, where will I be teleported this time? A grand palace library? Maybe a smelly underground slum? Or perhaps a shabby bookshelf on some market street? I hope it's a place a bit better than here. A boy was working forward, and I thought, who could it be at this late hour? It's not the sound of keys. As he was unlocking the door, I realized, it's the sound of someone forcing a lock open. I said, a thief? The skill of handling locks doesn't seem like that of an ordinary thief. He opened the door and walked forward. I thought, is this an academy student? Is this academy a breeding ground for lunatics? I reasoned. No matter what, there's no way someone would be sneaking around at this hour just for fun. They must be looking for something among the books. Could it be? He said. Grimoire, where are you? I thought, trying to find me. That's right. I'll be moved to another location in 1 minute. I shouted, over here. You're almost there. Please come this way. He looked around, turned, and heard me shouting, please read me. He saw me and started running towards me. He jumped, and I shouted, just open the cover. I thought, it has now been 300 years since I fell into the Imperial Family Academy. To be exact, it's the 109,561st day. For the first time within a single cycle, I met a second contractor. In the royal palace, the boy was lying down, exhausted. I thought, this girl made it all the way here without being detected by the magic surveillance devices and avoiding the guard's line of sight outside. Light began to emanate from the book, and he looked at it, confused. I transformed into a boy and asked, kid, answer me, what's your name? He replied, my name is Riley. I asked, all right, Riley, what about your family name? He said, I don't have one. I was confused, so he added, I have no family name. I said, well, fine, let's move on. How did you know I was in this library? It seemed like you knew I would disappear after today, and at the last moment, you even heard my voice? I thought, my voice is telepathic and can only be heard by the contract executor or those in contract with me, unless it's a creature sensitive to magic power, like a dragon or spirit. Yet an apprentice from an academy was able to detect such a complex magic fluctuation? He replied, I don't know, and I was dumbfounded. He added, it's just that I heard your voice without realizing it. I just heard about an incident in the library and was wandering around. Then I heard one of the mages muttering something. I thought, you just heard me? It sounds absurd. But by any chance, could it be that this kid was born with mana affinity comparable to a dragon or spirit? It's not entirely out of the realm of possibility. Among humans, there's an incredibly slim chance of possessing insane talent and extreme potential. And what if this girl had such talent and potential? Among my disciples, she might be able to become the greatest arch-mage. I said, well, for now, I understand, Riley. Let me introduce myself. I am the great mage Grimoire. I will turn you into an arch-mage. I asked, so, this is the dormitory where you stay? There are 5 beds in the room, but you're the only one here? He replied, my other roommates went back to their homes during the vacation. I said, I see. And why didn't you go? He told me, didn't I mention it before? I don't have a family name. I was silent, thinking, even commoners have family names in this world, so not having one means. I said, could you explain a bit more? As someone who will be guiding you from now on, I need to know about you as well. He replied, understood, and continued, when I reached an age where I could discern right from wrong, I became a member of a thieves' guild. I didn't have a name. The guild members just called me Tool Number 2. The one who joined before me was Number 1, and I was Number 2. We were just tools to them. So, we went with the flow. I lived each day following orders. But, well, a thieves' guild is never a good place, right? At some point, their gazes toward me started to feel strange. To set an example, I killed a few so they'd never dare to do the same. But no matter how many I dealt with, they never seemed to learn. What could I do? After that, I just escaped from the guild. I said, after that, it's obvious. You happened to meet a high-ranking mage on the street, and the mage, recognizing your talent, had you enroll in the academy. He replied, that's right. I thought, you used to be in the thieves' guild. That explains why you could sneak into the library. I asked, by the way, you're a special student, right? Are you facing any bullying at the academy? He replied, there was a bit of it at first, but it's okay now. A friend named Michael from the Bailaric family helped me. I thought, I didn't know such a family existed. I said, all right, understood. Then, let's do well going forward. I'll make sure to train you into a legendary arch-mage. He said, I look forward to working with you. Then someone shouted, hey Riley, open the door. We were both confused, and then the voice shouted, do you even know where we slept last night because of you? I said, You said your roommates all went home for the vacation, right? I asked. Are you being bullied? He replied. Yes. I said. What about Michael? He replied. That was a lie. Then some girls opened the door, and later he was beaten up on the ground. I asked. Are you okay? He replied. I'm fine. How much would it hurt if someone raised like a delicate flower in the greenhouse is hitting you? I said. Well, yeah, whatever. But considering your personality, why do you just take the hits? He said. They're all nobility. If I cause trouble, I'll be expelled. I told him. Considering that you'll already have little time to learn from me at the academy, if those kinds of kids get in the way, when will you ever learn magic? He asked. So, what should I do? I replied. There are two options. Either endure this life while learning magic from me or drop out of the academy. He said. There isn't a better choice between the two. I replied. Well, it's a matter of choice. I thought, a life of oppression with a guaranteed future at the academy, or a free life with an uncertain future outside. As we walked forward, I said, the dropout process took less than 3 minutes. He replied, it's just filling out paperwork and you're done. By the way, is it true that only I can see you, Grimoire? I replied, well, after all, this form is just for communicating with the contractor. My true form is a grimoire. He said. Still, it's a bit disappointing. There are so many privileges you could have enjoyed at Renalmus Academy, like the special artifacts that are prizes for the annual tournament or the special potions awarded to top students. He asked, why are you telling me this now? You should have told me a little earlier. I told him. Why? Are you suddenly regretting dropping out? He replied, no, it's not that. The vault is on the opposite side of the main entrance. Now I have to go back. I asked, what are you talking about? He replied, artifacts and potions. Weren't you suggesting that we steal them? You said that with my talent and your teaching, I'd achieve tremendous growth. I asked. That's true. He said. Then if I had stayed at Renalmus, I would have taken those items anyway. So, this isn't stealing. It's just taking what's rightfully mine. I thought, your way of thinking is a bit weird. I asked, how did you even find these emergency exits? He replied, it's all about having the right knowledge to find paths, commonly referred to as pathfinding. If it's that one, I learned it at Renalmus too. He said. Then let's see you try it. He started using his pathfinding magic. The magic found the path and avoided the traps. He said, along the left path, there are about 3 traps. The right path is a dead end. We should go left. He asked, how is that? I replied, not bad, stable and all good, but it's too ordinary and inefficient. Don't be confined by the rules set by mediocre minds. You're far superior to them. Let's try a different approach. Instead of shooting a chunk of mana in one direction, disperse your mana. He was shocked when the mana was going in multiple directions. I said, focus. This is just the beginning. Pour all your attention into each mana particle. Track each mana particle you emit one by one. Now visualize it. He said. I can see it. There was a filled bag with magic items. I said, well done. He asked, really? I told him, yes. As a first attempt, it was pretty good. Now, it's time to say goodbye to this place, I thought. I'm finally escaping this wretched place after spending 300 years in the Renalmus library. I was looking toward him and then asked, let's just clarify one thing. Riley, you risked your life to find me and even quit the academy that you were attending just to learn magic from me. Tell me, what's your real purpose? Then we go to a flashback where a house is burning, people are being killed, and everyone is screaming. 2 boys are running. One of them, Riley, sees the burning people. The other boy is yelling at him, quickly, run away. I said, Riley, why do you want to learn magic from me? He was silent for a moment before replying, I have a goal I must achieve by becoming stronger. I thought, those who seek power through magic usually want revenge. I then asked, is it for revenge? He replied, yes. I thought, against what? How? I'd like to ask for more details, but, I thought, talking about others' past tragedies isn't pleasant, especially if you've had a gloomy childhood like Riley's. Come to think of it, we've only just met. From now on, we'll gradually get to know each other. He asked, won't you tell me, Grimoire? I said, tell you what? He replied, you must have a purpose too, right? A reason for raising magicians like me. I thought, the reason I raise magicians, the reason I teach them my knowledge without holding back. I said, why does it matter? I'm just doing it for fun. Think about it. What fun is there in living as a magic book? I'm just enjoying myself while raising magicians. That's all. He replied, I guess so. Somewhere in a room, Riley said, by the way, you left the academy so abruptly. What are you planning to do now? I said, do you have the recommendation letter from the professor? He replied, yes. I told him, could you take it out for me? He started reading the letter and said, it says Irantes Magic Tower Recommendation Letter. I thought, Irantes, where is that? I was hoping for a recommendation from one of the Empire's 5 great magic towers, or at least a well-established magic tower. If I don't know about it, it must have been established while I was cooped up in the library for 300 years. A magic tower is where magicians can build connections. The position of a grand magician isn't something you can achieve with just skill alone. There's no better place than a magic tower to build a political background. I was angry and told him, but what's with this name I've never heard of before? He said, Mr. Magic Book, Irantes Magic Tower is actually one of the Empire's 5 great magic towers. To understand about Irantes Magic Tower, you first need to know about Ian Irantes, its founder and tower master. Here it is. I asked, why does this book include a portrait of him on his deathbed? They should have included one from when he was in his prime. Riley said, that is him from his prime. I was confused. He added, the portrait was painted when Ian Irantes was 40 years old. I said, did he pass away early? He replied, he's still alive. I asked, but it says here that this portrait was painted 300 years ago? He said, yes, and he's still alive to this day. Asked, is he some kind of half-elf or something? He replied, of course, he's not a half-elf. I told him, well, a half-elf wouldn't look like that anyway. Riley said, that's rude. Anyway, although he only reached the rank of high mage, Ian Irantes is considered to have achieved feats beyond that of an arch-mage. In fact, the academic society is currently debating whether to grant him the title of arch-mage. You could say he single-handedly elevated the status of the Irantes Magic Tower. I told him, still, it doesn't make sense. 300 years. One could say it's a long time. For me, stuck in the library, it felt like an eternity. But it's not long enough to change the landscape of the Imperial Magic Towers. Something I don't know about must have happened. Then suddenly I thought, Ian Irantes has reached the realm of immortality. He has been an archmage who elevated the Empire's status, and for hundreds of years, he's been fulfilling the wish of his teacher, Marta Farharich. I was looking towards him when, sometime later, Riley said, this is the Imperial capital. I asked, is this your first time here? He replied, it's my first time coming here leisurely, in broad daylight, since the Thieves Guild incident. He was looking forward to it, and I said, since we're here, want to take a look around? He told me, this is an island specialty, unicorn skewer. The capital is indeed different. They're selling meat from a divine beast. I said, it's just called unicorn meat, but it's no different from lamb skewers. He was blank for a moment and then said, I thought it was actual unicorn meat since it's called unicorn skewer. I asked, what is this guy saying? He felt cheated and wanted a refund. As he was eating the food I was looking forward to, I suddenly stopped. He was confused. There was a statue standing before us. Riley told me, the 5 great magicians, I heard that they were incredibly talented geniuses with a passion for magic. I replied, geniuses? My ass. They were all just a bunch of idiots. However, they weren't the type to give up. Remember when you asked me what my purpose was in raising magicians? Riley replied, yes. I told him, my goal is to raise the contractors into great magicians, and to get revenge on those who turned me into a scrap of paper. My disciples went through a lot for that purpose. Marta also tried to create a resurrection ritual for me, but she failed. As far as I remember, Marta didn't have any disciples. Riley asked, then did Ian Irantes lie? I replied, that's right, let's go to Irantes Magic Tower. With an angry expression, I added, I can't forgive someone who's impersonating my disciples. He responded, let's promise to help each other. I will take revenge on Ian Irantes for you, Grimoire. In return, please help me with my revenge as well. I said, I promise. Novelist recaps explanation. That day, Riley and I swore to help each other with our revenge. Our story began like that. He thought, this is me about 5 years after I reincarnated as a grimoire. I had been stolen from a shabby shop by a boy named Findal, who was surviving day by day while wandering the slums. Findal said, how about grimoire? It's derived from the ancient term for grimoire. I replied, what? Just call me Grimoire. He said, you don't like it again. Still, I'll just call you Grimoire. He was my first contractor. To me, who was confused shortly after becoming a grimoire, Findal was like light. I wanted to repay him. He asked, is this the right way to do it? I don't feel anything. I replied, just wait a little longer. He said, I think I'm feeling a slight tingling sensation. I told him, good. Slowly guide that energy into your mana heart. Findal said, it seems to be working, but it hurts a bit. I replied, that's normal. Just endure it and keep going. He told me, it's hot, Grimoire. It's starting to get a bit hot. I said, stop with the whining. You can endure this much if I'm going to impart magic knowledge, right? hurry up and continue, he screamed. Grimoire, it's too hot, I said. What are you doing rushing like that? If you keep rushing it like that. Then, his head exploded before my eyes, and he fell down dead. Somewhere in a carriage, we were moving forward. I said, Riley. He replied, yes. I looked toward the driver and thought, since the authority of binding has been established, Riley and I have a certain level of mutual understanding. If we add a bit of vocalization through mana, it becomes our own telepathy. I said, there's no one in this world who would think of making skewers out of unicorns. He replied, wanna bet? I told him, go ahead. No, don't actually do it though. He said, you got caught. I thought, it's a convenient technique in many ways. He said, but, Grimoire, why didn't you tell me about such a simple technique earlier? I replied, well, to be honest, I found it a bit cute when Riley whispered in front of others. If I say this, you'll get mad, so I'll stay silent. He said, anyway, due to the authority of binding, I know all your true feelings. I told him, anyway, if the Orontes Magic Tower is one of the 5 great towers, there must be a selection test. You shouldn't take this lightly. He asked, why? I replied, the 5 great towers don't want promising candidates like you. They want magicians who are already complete and verified. The selection test is a place of rigorous meritocracy. For Riley to be selected by the Orontes Magic Tower, she must stand out and showcase her strengths against numerous magicians. I said, of course, ordinary magicians prepare for this test for their entire lives. That's why it's called the Graveyard of Prodigies. But we'll be taking the test this year. He asked, what? You want me to grow to the level of a mid-level magician or higher in just 6 months? It's impossible. I said, it's entirely possible. I'm confident. With my help, you can pass the test in 6 months. I have something prepared. We were walking through the night sky. The driver said, excuse me, is this the right place? I said, yes, this is the right place. Please drop us off. Now, this is the place where you'll be training for the next 6 months, and it's also where my former disciple lives. He said, if he's your former disciple, he must be at least 300 years old, right? I can't believe he's still alive. I replied, he's not alive. But, well, not dead either. He was confused. I told him, one of my former disciples turned into a lich, and someone was looking toward us. I added, only a grand mage can become a lich. Got it? When he was alive, he was a great magician. He asked, so where's he now? There are only trees here. I told him, I don't know. You'll have to find that out yourself. It's a kind of test. He asked, a test? What do you mean by that? I told him, those who can't find him aren't worthy of learning magic. I said, you know how to find something, right? He replied, of course, finding the lich's hideout that's hidden somewhere in this forest. That's the first stage of the training. He started using his pathfinding magic and going through several magic circles. He said, so many disruptive spells. He's too much. I thought, barrier spells, illusions, magic distortions, and hundreds of other complex magic formulas that interfere with your senses. Someone said, golden-eyed girl, you seem quite proud. However, even an advanced mage took half a year to find my hideout. Do you really think a mere apprentice like you can find me that easily? He looked back, and I thought, it's no wonder she's so proud. Riley's affinity with mana is truly at the level of a prodigy. In a magical barrier, Riley said, found you. What? He shouted, how did you already wait? Hold on. He told, I just tried to sound cool after so long, and now my voice is gone. Okay, I'm better now, but seriously, how did you find me so quickly? It usually takes at least 2 years. I replied, the fastest record before was what? 4 months. I thought, but Riley broke through the barrier in under 10 minutes, reverse tracking the magic that interferes with one's pathfinding. A method only possible for someone with an insanely high affinity for mana. The lich said, did you really reverse track my interference spell? Riley replied, yes. He exclaimed, you're a monster. We were walking forward through some monsters. I thought your bizarre hobby hasn't changed. I said, honestly, is it really right to call this place a hideout? He said, come on, my room is this way. He took a teacup and Riley was strangely looking towards it. I said, hide that aura a bit. My disciple is uncomfortable. He replied, sorry, it's just that I haven't met anyone in a long time, so I'm not quite adjusted. I thought, having betrayed the laws of the celestial realm and being cursed by the gods, as a being of necromancy, I inevitably carry the aura of black magic. He said, is it better now? I further added, a being that defies death, a lich. I replied, yes, it's somewhat better. Now you understand why I raised a new disciple instead of keeping a lich around? Riley said, yes. I think I understand. I thought the foundation of a lich is black magic, which is strictly prohibited in the Empire. Devotees of evil gods, necromancers, black magicians, and even thieves' guilds that illegally procure materials for these practitioners. There's even a specialized organization called the Inquisition to punish them. Everything related to evil is subject to punishment. I said, well, That's not the most important topic right now. How have you been? Nothing serious happened. He asked what could have happened. Since I became a lich, I've been here for 2,000 years. I struggled through just 300 years. He replied I was worried since Master hadn't visited for nearly 300 years. I thought something major might have happened. I've been researching necromancy, black magic, and curses. Occasionally, I meet disciples that Master brings alone. Time flies by quickly, and about 5 years ago, I had to deal with adventurers who somehow found their way into my hideout. I asked adventurers broke in. He replied yes. I said here. He told I don't know how they found it. Maybe they just got lucky. Anyway, they mistook this place for a dungeon because of the black magic aura. They charged at me as soon as they saw me, so I had no choice but to fight back. I told, hey, everything's spilling out. So what happened to those adventurers? He said since I was short-handed, I made them my slaves, and here they are. Say hello, this is Jeremy, my right-hand man. Riley said thank you, and we were both petrified. I shouted he's a death knight. You crazy fool. You said he was an ordinary adventurer. How can an ordinary adventurer become a death knight? Riley said Master, this person. I asked what do you know him? He replied the sword at Jeremy's waist, with the golden lion on its hilt. He's the leader of the Inquisition. I heard he went missing during a mission 5 years ago and that they're still searching for him. So he was here. I shouted damn you. He replied I didn't know. I only fought off the adventurers who broke into my hideout. I thought usually, liches have their minds affected slightly by black magic. I used to visit frequently to check his mental state and make adjustments. It seems that in the 300 years I was absent, the reins were loosened. I took a long sigh. He said, but even though your disciple is still an apprentice, he came to me. Is there any specific reason? I replied if it's this child, she can definitely handle training with you now. He said well, I agree with that. I told him you remember the last disciple I brought, right? Marta Farhelik? He exclaimed the silver-haired girl. I told there's something related to those bastards. He replied so there's a fraud who's impersonating Marta Farhelik's disciple, and you're planning to enter the magic tower to take revenge on that fraud. I said yes. He asked why go through the trouble of taking revenge by entering the Orontes magic tower? Isn't it better to go to another magic tower and keep things in check? Places like the existing 5 major towers that have been overshadowed by Orontes. I told him that's certainly a simpler and more constructive approach. However, slowly destroying it from the inside personally, that's where the fun lies. He exclaimed no, what kind of perverted reason is that? I told is that something you should be saying? He said wait a moment, Riley. What do you think? If we follow Master's opinion, you'll be in danger. Riley said I think it's a thrilling and fun method. Lich replied I see. You're a pervert too. Let's just focus on training. Riley was shocked when he saw the magic circle. The Lich said the flow of magic is strange, isn't it? I spent a long time creating this space with Master. I thought half a year until the selection exam. It's too short of a time period for an apprentice to catch up with an advanced magician, even for a genius like Riley. But what if we had 4 times that amount of time? What if we had 2 years? Riley exclaimed this space is incredible. The Lich replied it was quite the challenge to create it. I told him now, you have 2 distinct advantages compared to other magicians. Firstly, your exceptional physical abilities due to your background with the Thieves Guild. And secondly, your naturally superior mana affinity. From now on, we'll focus solely on these 2 strengths, and on just one type of magic. Do you know what the spell is? He said isn't it a spell that dismantles other magic? It's a spell that disassembles the magic being cast by the opponent without needing to defend. I replied exactly. Dispel is a counter-type magic that dismantles spells. This means that it could make a fireball that's flying towards us magically vanish into thin air. I said so you understand why I'm asking you to train in this? He replied yes. You want me to use Dispel to prevent the opponent from casting magic during the selection exam, and then leverage my physical abilities for hand-to-hand combat, correct? I told him exactly. You're right, no matter how high the opponent's magic level is compared to yours, just make sure they can't use magic. The Lich said that's a bit underhanded. I told them but it's our only way to handle magicians in the selection exam. So, Lich, I'll leave it to you. He replied yes. Riley said wait a moment. The Lich said no. Riley said you're starting right away? You haven't told me anything about Dispel. He asked didn't you learn it at Renelmus? Riley replied it's advanced level magic. It's usually taught in the 3rd year. The Lich asked is that so? Then it's even better. Usually, you get better at things like this quickly after a few tries. He asked what? We were both thinking then. I said doesn't your skill usually improve when you get hit more, because you don't want to get hit again? He replied that's true. I said but why isn't this one making any progress? He used his magical power on Riley and he started running from him. Sorry she is a girl not a boy whatever. The Lich explained because she's been running away for the entire hour. I thought is there something wrong with my teaching method? It's already been 3 days since I met Riley. Though it hasn't been long, I've pretty much figured out her personality. Riley has an extremely strong sense of pride. Should I say she's extremely reluctant to reveal her weaknesses? She has a strong aversion to failure. For members of the Thieves Guild, failing a mission isn't an option. I wonder if the psychological pressure built up from childhood is still affecting her now. Yeah, maybe. Because of her fear of failure, does she feel like she has no choice but to run away blindly? She said that's not it. I just ran away because I was afraid it would hurt if I got hit by magic. He asked, that's what it is, right, master? I thought never mind then. I said what you don't know isn't the principle, but the method. She replied that's correct. I thought the method to detect the opponent's casting. The method to delve into the source of the spell. The method to delve into that magical formula. I asked you don't know each detailed step for dispelling, but you know what? I've already told you everything you need. Think about it carefully. The Lich was using his powers and I said just now, you were only flustered about getting hit by attacks, but now you can think calmly. Riley touched it and said you've told me everything I need. I replied yes. She said but the only things you've taught me are pathfinding and telepathy. I replied yes. She told so. Are you saying I should apply these too? I understand. I won't ask any more questions. Instead, she was remembering when I said don't be bound by the rules set by mediocre people. She said as the Grimoire advised, I'll try to blaze my own trail. She thought a maze-like mana circuit, and started using pathfinding. Right, we've already experienced mazes twice. The underground passage of Artemis, as well as the way to the Lich's hideout. I said got it. Now, you're going to unravel those magical formulas one by one, stealthily, so that others can't notice, like using telepathy when having a secret conversation. She was struggling, then I stopped her and said congratulations, you've succeeded. She asked how long did it take? I replied 4 hours. She told then in reality, only 1 hour has passed. I replied no, 4 hours have passed in the outside world. You've been wrestling with that low mana sphere for 16 hours. She fell down and said time really flies by, doesn't it? I told from now on, it's going to be more like that. She said still, it's okay. I think I've got the hang of it now. I replied well, that's good then. I thought time flew by relentlessly. The seasons changed one by one. He was training and I further added September, the cool autumn when the sun starts to set early, and she was fighting with the monsters. I explained the time of year the magic world pays the most attention to. The season for the 5 Great Magic Towers selection exam has arrived. She made a magical explosion and we were all excited, and I said it was a perfect dispel without even a slight error. I thought our 6 months of training, which felt like 2 years to us, has finally come to an end. I told them at this rate, I think you could handle even a mid-level mage without any problems. She asked really? I replied yes. Well then, let's call it a day. The Lich said thank you for your hard work. I'll tell Jeremy to prepare a delicious dinner. She replied okay. I said Lich, you've worked hard too. She replied it was nothing. I told I think with just a bit more polishing on attack magic, it'll be perfect. What's that? They were reading the letter and there was written Lich's world domination plan. Step 1 create Death Knight. Step 2 synthesize a chimera capable of using magic. And we got stunned. I said what the hell is this? Were you trying to conquer the world while I was away? He replied that's not it. I told what do you mean it's not? You're completely insane. Were you trying to bring the whole continent to ruin? He shouted okay. I was trying to conquer the world. I was just going to take over a small city at the eastern edge and make it my kingdom. Happy now? Angrily I took a long sigh. He shouted why? A Lich of my caliber should be allowed to have this much ambition. I said I'm worried this guy might cause trouble soon. No, hasn't he already caused one? I asked what is it? I was just saying. Why are you reacting like that? He replied I didn't cause any trouble. I thought around the time Lich's world domination plan was discovered. Here, in the northern part of the empire, someone was walking forward and I explained there were others who were also plotting another conspiracy, and it was a beautiful girl. The northern part of the empire, on the road leading to the city of mages, Wilhelm, some thieves were following a girl. One of them said, doesn't that girl's outfit look expensive at first glance? They stood there, ready to attack. One thief threw an arrow forward, hitting the girl, and she fell down. They walked toward her, starting to loot her belongings. One man, shocked, pointed ahead. The girl was still alive, smiling at them, leaving them confused. She walked forward as they readied their weapons. Still smiling, she left them bewildered. Suddenly, a slash came out of nowhere, cutting one man's body into 2 pieces. He screamed, and soon they all died. The girl said, if you mess with a mage, you should pay the price. An old man observed, the work of a mage. It looks like there was a fight against the bandits. This fight took place about 5 hours ago. He continued, no, it would be more accurate to call it a one-sided massacre. The horseman asked, then what should we do? The old man replied, just ignore it and move on. We can report it to the guards once we arrive in the city. He walked into the carriage, saying, as long as I'm here, there shouldn't be any problems. The other man replied, understood. I'll trust you, Sir Mage. The old man then turned to Riley and asked, what's the reason for your visit to Wilhelm? Riley responded, I'm here to take the entrance exam for the 5 great magic towers. The old man sighed, that's just suicide. Didn't you see the massacre that just happened? The selection exams attract all sorts of mages. Among them are lunatics who view the exam as a legitimate chance for murder. You should at least have the skill to protect yourself if you value your life. Rising to the lower ranks at such a young age is commendable, but the tower's selection exam is more than you can imagine. He added, how about training further at a school in Wilhelm instead? Riley replied, I appreciate the sincere advice, but this is a decision I've already made. The old man was silent for a while, then shook his head, thinking, it seems another promising candidate will meet an untimely end this year. He took a deep breath and asked, what's with that old man's meddling? She replied, indeed. Later, I said, we've arrived. She looked around and said, it's fascinating. This is the first time I've seen such an advanced city. We were in Wilhelm, a cold city where snow falls all year round. It is the heart of magical engineering. A large amount of snow fell on the alleyway, leaving nearby people confused. I said, the appearance has changed, but the atmosphere remains the same. Have you figured out the way? She replied, I don't know at all. I sighed, it's frustrating. The city has changed so much that I don't recognize the way either. Someone was following us, and I asked, why isn't the location of the selection exam administration on the map? She used a pathfinding spell and said, there are 10 locations that could be the administration office. All of them are relatively clean buildings with restricted access to the public. The issue is that they could be branches of the academies or mid-level research labs. I muttered, I would have followed that meddlesome old man if I had known. She sighed, I should have stuck close to that mage, even if it meant enduring his nagging. I said, hey, honestly, who would have known Wilhelm would change so much in 300 years? Suddenly, a man appeared and greeted us. Hello, it seems you're new here. I thought, a plump robe, active in Wilhelm, a hazy display of magical energy wandering around. He told us, usually, newcomers to Wilhelm have a lot of trouble finding the administration office. I thought, this one, he's a novice mage. She said, pathfinding is useless here. Residual magical energy from experiments and research interferes with pathfinding spells. I asked, so, is there another way to find the way? He said, well, I suppose asking a kind-looking person for help might be one way. She asked me, what should we do? I replied, well, it's up to you. She said, then, we'll be in your care. He smiled, of course. Where is the little miss headed? She replied, the selection exam administration. He nodded, I see, you're here to take the selection exam this time. She replied, yes. Well, she interrupted, excuse me, how much longer will it take? He replied, to the selection exam administration, let me see, about 15 more minutes from here. She told him, I'm talking about the spell you've been casting on me since earlier. He asked, when did you notice? She replied, from the very beginning. Since we met, you've been putting a strange emphasis on certain words. Then she asked, you were using a peculiar intonation to imbue your words with magic, weren't you? Commonly referred to as an incantation, the very first step in casting a spell. That man was using a peculiar intonation to disguise the incantation and cast a spell on Riley. He laughed loudly and said, you followed me even after knowing that? She replied, yes. He asked, why? I thought the spell the man cast was related to paralysis. If it had succeeded, Riley would have been completely paralyzed and then sold as a test subject to a black magician or an illegal slave trader. Well, it's a common occurrence in Wilhelm. The victims are usually young ones like Riley. Despite that, the reason we followed the man was, I said, even if Riley fought him, I continued. She told him, you don't look like someone who could hurt me at all. He got very angry and replied, you've become arrogant because you've reached the entry level of the lower ranks at such a young age. Today, I'll teach this presumptuous little mage a painful lesson. Even among the same lower ranks, haven't you learned that the gap in skill can be as vast as the sky and the earth? I shouted, yes, Riley is the sky. And you're the earth. She asked, am I your first target for kidnapping? He replied, you're the 13th or so, I think. That's quite a few kidnappings. He confidently said, everyone falls for my smile. Well, I suppose I am somewhat handsome. We were confused, and he said, people often say I have a face that easily makes women cry. She told him, indeed, they must be wailing every night. In that regard, you must be very good at making women cry. Impressive. He grew angry listening to that and, using his magical powers, shouted, you little whore. Then he created a fire spear. I said, that guy, even though he's a lower rank novice, his control is quite good. He was about to attack us, and I further said, perfect for practical experience. He attacked Riley. She was analyzing the magic, and I thought, through training with Lich, Riley's dynamic vision has already surpassed that of a human. When someone like Riley channels magic into her brain, the fire was coming at her, but she used to spell magic on it, and the kidnapper was shocked. He shouted, "What on earth was that trick?" She replied, "Well, who knows? Isn't this the very difference between the sky and the earth you mentioned?" I thought, Riley's attack is different from that guy's. No rotation, no application, no tricks, just a simple mass of magical energy. She used her magic on the old man, and he was thrown aside. He fell down and started coughing blood. She said, "Well, thanks to you, I've learned a valuable lesson. As a token of my gratitude, let me give you a tip. Being skilled in magic doesn't solve everything. Especially in combat, outcomes can vary greatly depending on characteristics and talent." "What's this?" "He's dead," I said. "Did you just kill him?" I asked. She replied, "Well, if you put it that way." I told her, "No, I'm not saying it to make a big deal out of it." I shouted, "Damn it. Just resurrect already. We came all the way here to gain practical experience, and ending it like this isn't right." Despite my desperate pleas, the man did not resurrect. In a snowy night, she said, of all places, the last, 10th building turned out to be the administration office. I replied, "Well, our luck really is terrible." I thought, initially, I checked the 10 locations presumed to be the administration office using pathfinding. However, strangely, no one knew the whereabouts of the administration office, and only after checking all the buildings once was I able to find it. The Magic Tower Selection Exam Administration Office was so obvious with the signboard, yet Riley didn't detect it. Something felt strange. It wasn't on the map, nor was it detectable with pathfinding. It seems like they're intentionally trying to hide the location, I noticed. I told her, "Riley, do you remember the locations of all the buildings we've visited so far?" She replied, "Yes, I've marked them all on the map." I said, "Now, mark this building as well." She said, "An inverted pentagram, it's a magic circle." I replied, "These administration office bastards, they've used the entire city of Wilhelm as a magic circle. They've placed special buildings at each location and activated the magic circle." I thought, concealment, magic barrier, invisibility, illusion, spells to confuse those who come here and make them struggle as much as possible. She asked, "Why would they do something like this?" I replied, "Well, I suppose there's only one way to find out, isn't there?" We opened the door and entered the house. A red-haired lady stood on a chair, looked toward us, and said, "Congratulations on passing the first stage of the selection exam." She explained, "This is a token that proves you are a candidate for the selection exam. Showing this token will allow you to use Wilhelm's facilities for free. The next selection exam is in a week, so please take plenty of rest until then." Riley replied, "Yes." Then, she said to me, "So, did we pass the first exam by chance?" For the first exam, it seemed too easy. I replied, "Having to go to 10 different buildings was tedious, but it wasn't difficult." I thought, but that's something only Riley, who is skilled in pathfinding, could say. The buildings weren't on the map and were difficult to find, even with pathfinding. There were 10 locations that were presumed to be administrative offices. All of this was part of an exam. I remembered when she said, "The selection exam administration office only appears after you've found all 9 points." I thought that administrator mentioned something like that. You have to overcome various obstacles, track down all 9 locations, and then find the final administration office. This search for the administrative office must be hell for the other mages. She said, "Right, and yes," she told her, "please avoid any conflicts with other examinees as much as possible before the next exam." Riley was silently listening. Then, Riley asked me, "What was that about?" I replied, "It's nothing. Sometimes, there are some idiots around who pick fights blindly to gauge the level of other examinees before the exam. I think that's to prevent those kinds of guys from causing trouble in Wilhelm." She said, "That has nothing to do with me." I told her, "No, it's different. There might be some guys who ignore the warning and still try to pick a fight with you." She noticed something and called my name, Grimoire. I replied, "Yes, I know." I thought, just like now, the sharp aura directed at Riley. She said, "It's a familiar mana, the same mana I felt from the corpses we saw on the way in the carriage." I said, "The one currently emitting the killing intent is the culprit behind those corpses. Let's track the source of the killing intent." I thought, another application of pathfinding, abandoning sight and seeing the world solely through mana. Then, she noticed a girl near a corner and said, "There you are." She asked me, "What should I do now?" I replied, what are your thoughts after seeing her? Do you think you can win? She said, of course. I told her, then wait. Get into a defensive stance as much as possible. Suddenly, a magic ball appeared before her face. I told her, dispel, or maybe duck to dodge it. I thought, no, it's too fast. Before I can counter or dodge, my brain will be pierced, she said. In that case, she used dual casting, one to attack and one to dispel. I'll have to sacrifice some flesh to take the bone, she said. I thought, I'll put up a barrier on the side where the attack is coming from. It'll shatter quickly, but it'll create an opening to dodge. At the same time, I'll prepare a magic missile. Right as the opponent thinks I'm only casting defensive magic, I'll strike immediately. She was shocked when she noticed there was no gap to attack from. It can't break through, she said to me. The dispelling barrier broke, and the red ball hit her head. She fell to the ground, dead. Suddenly, she woke up, shocked and confused, looking around. Then a girl said to her, it was a battle that took place within your mind. She thought, mental battle, a simulation that manifests in a state of extreme concentration, where you detect the opponent, sense the killing intent, and think through how you'll respond. A mere delusion. The girl said to her, by the way, did you just see death? I told her, a reversed pentagram. So, you're an examinee for the selection exam. Looks like you didn't even consider the warning to avoid conflict. I thought that gruesome scene could only be described as the work of a deranged killer. I told Riley, be sure to be careful of that person. She seems like a truly vicious psychopath. Among those who use magic, there's no sane person who'll use it as a murder weapon. Later, she asked Riley, is it good? Tasty? Riley replied, yes, it's delicious. I was standing there, blank, while she said, this is the best restaurant in Wilhelm. You don't have to answer. Just eat. This uni will pay for everything. Riley asked, really? You'll pay for everything? She replied, of course. I was rude earlier, so I should at least treat you to this. Riley was overjoyed and said to me, Grimoire, I like this person. I replied, I told you not to get too close. She said, people who treat others to good food are never bad. I asked, is it that delicious? She replied, yes. I've only ever eaten bad food in that lich's musty cave. I said, the lich would be hurt if he heard that. I thought, he worked hard, trying to cook for you with all his might. Not to mention, he carefully balanced all the nutrients and probably used rare ingredients like magic herbs without holding back. She said, but what's the point if it doesn't taste good? I told her, you're pretty harsh. Well, right now, the most important thing is, she interrupted, my name is Rebecca Duncan. You can call me Becky if you like. Nice to meet you, Riley. I thought, this crazy killer is the real problem. Riley thanked her for the meal. Becky replied, no need to thank me. I'm happy that you enjoyed the food, Riley. I thought this mage's name is Reb Duncan. At the young age of 27, she had reached the brink of the advanced level as an intermediate mage and came to Wilhelm for the selection exam, and you really don't need to be that grateful. Anyway, she was laughing and the cook was frightened. You must have heard from the administrator, right? Some facilities are free to use if you show them this emblem. This restaurant is one of them. Riley, you're more naive than I thought. Look at your expression. I didn't mean to deceive you. Sorry. I thought she still hasn't grasped the situation. When Riley makes a blank expression, it means she's quite upset. Becky asked, so what are you going to do now? Do you have a place to stay? I was just planning to go to the closest one on the list. She shouted, that's not good. Even if the facilities have been inspected by the 5 great magic towers, there's a significant difference in quality. Give me the map and list. This one's okay. This Skywalen is the best place for lodging. I'm staying there because it's soundproof, quiet, the owner is kind, and the food is the best. Riley said, I see. Becky further added, and the cafe, oh, this place again. Riley replied, okay. She told, is this enough? We were confused looking at her map. Riley said, but aren't you coming along, Becky? She replied, I'll be staying at someone's house whom I've known for a while. Becky was looking towards her and then said, why? Do you want to stay there too? Riley replied, no. Becky exclaimed a flat-out refusal. I was just asking. I thought, well, based on my experience of living for thousands of years, I'd say that statement was sincere. If Riley had accepted the offer, she would have guided her there. Riley told me to be this interested in me, I wonder why. I replied, I don't know. I thought still, if I had to guess, perhaps she was intrigued by the fact that Riley, who was only at the novice level, managed to pass the first stage of the exam. Maybe she's curious about what kind of talent allowed her to pass. She said to me, you're speaking quite well for someone who says they don't know. I replied, just a guess. She said, indeed, there's a saying that those of the same kind recognize each other. I asked, are you saying that I'm the lunatic here? She replied, not at all. Becky said, well then, rest up, Riley. See you again at the next exam. I thought to think that someone who smiles like that is a maniac. who unleashed killing intent at first meeting and is a lunatic who's brutally killed those bandits. The more you don't know about your opponent, the more dangerous they become. I told Riley, before you part ways, you should have a few more words. She replied yes. She said to Becky, see you next time, and when we meet next time, I hope we can fight head-on. Don't use something sneaky like illusion magic to scare me. Becky asked illusion magic? I thought the virtual battle fought during the first encounter with Becky. Riley faced death in that battle and returned to the real world. Becky had said that the phenomenon was a mental battle. While mental battle is a real concept, Riley further added that was actually the illusion magic you cast on me. Becky exclaimed, you're pretty impressive. How did you notice that? Only a high-level mage would have caught that. I said, from ancient times, there's only one way to detect an illusion magic. Certainty. Riley told her there's no way I'd die at the hands of an incompetent mage like you. Angrily she replied, if it were a battle within my mental space, I would have won without fail. Riley said, but since something impossible happened, it must have been illusion magic. Becky was nervous listening that. I thought all mages have a strong pride. No mage would stay silent if called incompetent to their face. She said, right now. Becky angrily asked, what did you just say? I further added, and especially if that was said by a mage of a lower rank. Becky asked, you would have won without fail? Riley replied yes. At first, she was angry, then confused, and after thinking for a moment, she laughed out loud, saying, win, you say? Without fail? You would win against me. Wake up, kid. I'm a mage who has reached the brink of the advanced level. Compared to that, you're just a novice who has barely reached the apprentice level. There's an unspoken gap between us. I explained the amount of magical power one can handle at once, the precision of control, the strength of the mana heart, even the speed at which spells are cast. Every time you rise to a new level, now that person is lying in an alley in Wilhelm, and told such a widening gap cannot be easily bridged. No matter the skill, the difference in levels is absolute. It's an established fact in the world of magic. However, Riley said there was someone who said something similar to me earlier today. Now that person is lying in an alley in Wilhelm, with a hole in his chest. I thought Riley knows how to fight and win against stronger opponents, and she has already done so multiple times. The duel with the Lich, the she-chimera dealt with in the hideout, and the battle with the man I met today. She was laughing loudly and said, I'd love to attack you right now if I could. Riley told her, feel free to try. I'm ready for anything. She replied, shut up, you detestable kid. Do you think I don't know your intentions? I don't want to be disqualified again for ignoring the administrator's warning. Riley told, that's a lie. You're running away because you'll lose. Becky asked, sure, let's meet again at the exam. Okay. Alright, it was fun. I've met all sorts of crazy examinees before. Riley said, I also enjoyed it. Thanks to you, I've gathered a lot of good information. Becky said to her, alright then. Farewell, Riley. Take care until the exam. I had a good time today. I mean it, Riley said to me, so it was indeed a clone. I replied, the real body is probably on the opposite side of Wilhelm. She said it was quite an impressive cloning technique. I thought a strange flow of mana that cannot flow in ordinary life forms. If it weren't for someone as sensitive to mana as Riley, I wouldn't have noticed it. Riley told me, by the way, I think I understand now. I asked what? She said why Becky was interested in me. It was just out of curiosity. I wonder when this kid will realize that I'm a clone, I guess. I wonder what kind of expression that kid would make if she figured it out, while subtly hoping to be discovered. Sometimes the strength of the mana flow increased because of that. I asked why would she do such a thing. She replied, it's fun, isn't it? I exclaimed, I'm asking how you think it's fun. She told me it's about enjoying the thrill of being almost discovered. It sounds like it would be a lot of fun to me. I told her, such a lunatic's mindset. You're quite remarkable, too admirable. Riley. She replied, of course. A man was looking through some papers and was saying, as you said, there are unusually many interesting applicants this year. A voice asked, how far have you seen? He replied, up to the second son of the Stingwood family. The voice said, that must be nostalgic. He told her, indeed. It feels like just yesterday when I first met him at the mansion, and now he's already here for the selection test. It was the teacher, and she said, put the memories aside for now and turn to the next page. The most interesting part is yet to come. He asked, really? He was looking towards Riley's picture and said, Renelmus Academy. The teacher said she's new here. It seems like she wanted to take the selection test as quickly as possible. He replied, arrogant, isn't she? Typical of someone from Renelmus. She told him, well, do you know how long it took that kid to pass the first test? He replied, she barely passed, right? I'd say she probably wandered around Wilhelm for nearly 3 months. She answered no and told him this child arrived at Wilhelm this afternoon. It took her less than half a day to find the management office. He asked, the fastest record was 4 hours, wasn't it? Even that was the result of Rebecca Duncan's use of 20 clones to stir up Wilhelm. He thought the average time for first test passers to find the management office is about a week. Even Garen Edward von Theobald, who is at the high expert level, took a whole day to find the management office. He said so. It means this kid, Riley, is practically in the first place. She answered yes and said I was right, wasn't I? There will be a lot to watch this year. He replied indeed, in many ways. 1 week until the second selection test. She said me so, let's take a good rest. I replied we've been running non-stop until now. I thought Riley began a lifestyle more leisurely than anyone else. Wake up when the sun is high and have breakfast. Take a nap and have lunch. Have dinner in a relaxed state. And 3 days later, she exclaimed I'm bored. I asked shall we go for a walk? She replied sure. She put her coat on and I said you look fine. She told me even though I bought quite expensive clothes, I still have a lot of money left. I said well, you're still using what you received from Renelmus. She told me that place is Arcadia Central Library. I said it's Arcadia Central Library. She asked do you know about it? I replied it's a building that's been around for hundreds of years. Do you know? It's probably the second largest after Lutmiz. It's also the place with the most number of magical books stored. She said can I go in? I asked here really? She replied there's nothing else to do anyway. Moreover, selection test applicants can use it without any special procedures. I told him that's definitely an attractive benefit. I thought of course, exploring Arcadia would be a beneficial experience. There are quite a lot of great books and rare magical tomes there. But still, I'm hesitant. I've been stuck in that wretched place for 300 years. Countless of those wretched countless books and books. She told me but you can't avoid the library forever. Can you? I replied that's true. I thought unlike the 21st century Earth, overflowing with technology and information, in this world, you have to use books to gain knowledge. As Riley said, avoiding the library forever is not an option, and I need to overcome this trauma eventually. I told her alright, let's just close our eyes and go in. If it doesn't work out once you're inside, you can always come back out. We got in and she experimented. It's incredibly beautiful. I told her well, it doesn't have that overwhelming feeling of books crammed everywhere like it was at Renelmus, so it's fine here. Even if the ceiling is a cheap imitation of Hogwarts. She asked what's Hogwarts? I replied it's something like this. She said anyway, the access card I received is platinum. I told her it's the highest rank, so we can go anywhere. She said so. There's only one destination then, said as expected. It's that place. I shouted restricted area with forbidden books. She told me this is exciting. I replied it's fine with the 2 books you picked out from the general section. But forbidden books are the real deal. I said now, lift up the lamp on the floor. Is there a brighter place around? She told me that area seems a bit brighter. I said alright, let's head that way. She said it seems like someone is already there. We were both standing there with a lamp then the old man looked towards us and asked how did you get here? Riley showed her magical stigma. The old man was shocked and said you managed to pass the first trial despite that dreadful spell. I asked her why is it that old man again? He is such a bothersome type. She told me even though you've already received the first round pass token, isn't it better than before? The old man said to her give up. She asked pardon. He explained the exam will be far more brutal than you imagine. The moment the scent of blood spreads, this place will turn into a slaughterhouse. A magician with decades of experience in real combat might manage, but for a talented magician with no experience like you, it will be a very dangerous test. So give up, and hope for the next opportunity. We were both standing there silent. She said thank you for your genuine concern, but as I mentioned last time, I have already made my decision. This said how foolish, brimming with reckless enthusiasm, typical of your age. She told him some people even admire my courage. He replied courage? Don't be absurd, that's sheer recklessness. She said I don't think so. The old man looked towards her, releasing his energy. He said, I see. In that case, allow me to show you myself then. He told her let's have a duel.